men of the Red Army. The independence of our country is in your hands.
When war arises, you know it's propaganda time.
The campaign in Poland gave us the opportunity to really get to know the Jewish people.
Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 propaganda films.
He's looking at you, kid.
For this list, we're looking at propaganda films from the first half of the 20th century that were effective in promoting their war-related themes. That means other topics are off limits.
That airplane of yours looked exactly like a ruptured duck.
Number 10, 30 Seconds Over Tokyo.
Hello, York. Doolittle. York, I want you to get 24 B-25s with volunteer crews down to Eglin Field as soon as you can. The job will take them out of the country for about 3 months.
Released by Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, this propaganda film combines footage of actors and real soldiers to tell the story of the first airstrike by the U.S. against Japan following the attack on Pearl Harbor, otherwise known as the Doolittle Raid.
Gentlemen, Lieutenant Colonel Doolittle. As you were.
Great effort was made to ensure the film was as realistic as possible, with soldiers who fought in the raid offering perspective and genuine footage of real bombers used.
There she is, fellas. Take a good gander. When we get back home, the folks will want to know what Tokyo used to look like.
The result is a compelling and human film that paints a picture of what life during wartime was like.
If anybody on the field or off the field tries to engage you in conversation as to why you're here, no matter how innocently, I want you to get his name and give it to me, and I'll turn it over to the FBI.
Number 9, Moscow Strikes Back.
They parade under a warm sun, young men and women celebrating creative arts. This was Moscow at peace. This is the way of life our Russian allies are fighting to preserve.
This documentary takes viewers right to the heart of the Battle of Moscow between the Soviets and Hitler's German forces. Gritty and raw, the propaganda film features brutal shots of war fatalities interwoven between real scenes of battle.
Attack!
But its power relies on its patriotism. The Russians are depicted as a tough, strong, and irrepressible people.
This army is approaching Moscow, and Moscow citizens go all out for defense.
The winner of the USSR Stalin Prize, Moscow Strikes Back, was also re-edited for time and content for U.S. audiences, and that version won an Academy Award.
In the dark hour, the will to victory found victory.
Number 8, Olympia. Joseph Goebbels was Nazi Germany's Minister of Propaganda, but Leni Riefenstahl was the woman behind the camera, who broke new ground in terms of filmmaking techniques. Released only 1 year before the start of World War II, Olympia aims to show the glory, strength, and peacefulness of Germany by showing the success of the 1936 Berlin Olympic Games.
Ich verkünde die Spiele von Berlin zur Feier der 11. Olympiade neuer Zeitrechnung als eröffnet.
Though the film and Riefenstahl herself soon fell into disfavor in the United States and elsewhere, the importance of this propaganda film cannot be denied.
Deutscher Doppelsieg im Hammerwerfen.
Number 7, Casablanca.
With the coming of the Second World War, many eyes in imprisoned Europe turned hopefully or desperately toward the freedom of the Americas.
It's a universal story of love, loss, and doing what's right, all set against the backdrop of World War II.
Of all the gin joints in all the towns in all the world, she walks into mine.
And that's exactly why Casablanca works so well as propaganda. Everyone can identify with its characters.
Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Though its patriotic elements are arguably subtle, they are undeniable as Rick and Ilsa struggle against the fascists.
What if you murdered all of us?
From every corner of Europe, hundreds, thousands would rise to take our places. Even Nazis can't kill that fast.
Emotion, fear, and even music help sway the audience. And since Casablanca was released squarely in the middle of the Second World War, it was a valuable tool against the Axis powers.
The problems of the world are not in my department. I'm a saloon keeper.
My friends in the underground tell me that you've quite a record.
Number 6, The Eternal Jew.
The Jews have been this way throughout their entire history. Their faces bear the age-old features of the perpetual sponger, the eternal Jew.
Another film made at the behest of Joseph Goebbels, this piece of Nazi propaganda was decidedly anti-Semitic and used as a tool to prepare the public for the Holocaust.
In this century of industry and progress, Jewish business blooms as never before. The House of Rothschild is just one example of the use of this tactic by the Jews to spread their net of financial influence over the working man.
Already experts at using propaganda to shape public opinion, the Nazis unfairly painted Jews as soulless, uncivilized parasites that must be exterminated.
The rabbis are not peaceful theologians, but political educators. The politics of a parasite race must be carried on in secret.
With real as well as staged footage taken of Jews in Polish ghettos shortly after the Nazi occupation, The Eternal Jew was not a commercial success, but it was instrumental as a propaganda apparatus.
Considering the well-known German love of animals, it would otherwise have been impossible for the Jews to continue their cruel torture of innocent and defenseless animals unpunished.
Number 5. Why We Fight.
Causes and events leading up to our entry into the war. Well, what are the causes? Why are we Americans on the march?
Commissioned by the U.S. government and mostly directed by Frank Capra, the man behind films like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Why We Fight is a group of 7 documentaries that explain why the Americans joined World War II.
We let our hopes for peace become so strong that they grew into a determination not to fight unless directly attacked.
Created to convince soldiers and the masses to support the war effort, this series aimed to refute similar films made by Axis nations.
Yes, we were a nation that wanted peace, but we hadn't yet learned that peace for us depends on peace for all.
And Capra used footage from those same films to help highlight the stark differences between fascist countries and democratic ones, and to get the U.S. on board.
That is the cause in which we fight. We lose it, and we lose everything.
Number 4, The Great Dictator.
Is this the man?
That's him.
Hail Hinkle.
Who's he?
Don't fool with me, I said Hail Hinkle.
Though on the surface a silly satire, this Charlie Chaplin film is propaganda at its finest.
Don't you remember me?
Huh? The war, you saved my life.
Me?
Strange. And I always thought of you as an Aryan.
I'm a vegetarian.
Chaplin's first talkie and his most commercially successful film, The Great Dictator, came before the U.S. joined the war.
Yes, dictator of the world. We'll start with the invasion of Austerlitz. After that, we won't have to fight, we can bluff. Nation after nation will capitulate. Within 2 years, the world will be under your thumb.
Leave me. I want to be alone.
And thus, Chaplin's critical message against Hitler and his Nazis, and Mussolini and his fascists, was controversial, though also popular, at its release. Featuring one of cinema's most stirring speeches, The Great Dictator was practically a call to action for Allied forces, and of immeasurable value as an instrument of propaganda.
I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that.
Number 3, Battleship Potemkin. Black and white in more ways than one, this Soviet propaganda film presents viewers with a clear-cut message against Russia's Tsarist regime. Directed by Sergei Eisenstein as a dramatization of a real-life mutiny that occurred in 1905, Battleship Potemkin was a watershed film, as it tested the effects of editing on audiences and proved how montage could evoke an unparalleled emotional response in viewers. With one of cinema's most famous sequences as its centerpiece, this film inspired many to parody it, to censor it, and to act. Number 2. The Birth of a Nation. Originally known as The Klansman, this piece of propaganda takes place in America following the Civil War. Directed by D.W. Griffith, it was used to enlist newcomers to the Ku Klux Klan by depicting the KKK as heroes and African Americans as dense and hostile. Featuring white men in blackface instead of African American actors, the film was controversial even in 1915 and was protested by the fledgling NAACP. A century after its production, The Birth of a Nation still divides with its thematic content but impresses with its cinematic splendor. Before we unveil our top pick, here are a few honorable mentions.
It was just such people as these who bore the full brunt of the first German onslaught on England.
Je pense que vous me prendriez pour un fou, pour un imbécile, si je vous disais que votre ami Godowski était un agent de la Gestapo.
Now you hear a lot about how long it takes battle-hardened soldiers out of green troops. Listen, I got to be a veteran in one day. That day.
Number 1. Triumph of the Will.
Des 6. Parteitages eröffne ich mit dem ehrfurchtsvollen Gedenken an den.
Created by Nazi Party propagandist Leni Riefenstahl, this is considered by some to be one of history's best documentaries.
Über der Bewegung ein schwarzer Schatten erhoben. Die SA hat so wenig als irgendeine andere Institution der Partei.
However, it is also a propaganda tool commissioned by Hitler himself to promote Germany as a great world power. Showing the 1934 Nuremberg rally where 700,000 followers gathered to support the Nazis, the film uses groundbreaking techniques like aerial photography and distorted perspective to promote national pride and Hitler as a godlike figure.
Einer von uns atmen kann, wird diese Bewegung seine Kräfte leihen und für sie eintreten.
Severe, focused, and terrifying, Triumph of the Will is perhaps the most effective weapon of propaganda ever made.
Da habt ihr mir eure Treue tausendfältig bewiesen. Und in der Zeit vor uns kann es nicht anders sein und es wird auch nicht anders sein.
Do you agree with our list? What would you choose as the most effective propaganda films? For more mesmerizing top 10s published every day, be sure to subscribe to WatchMojo.com.